Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Texas Signal SignalCast. I'm your host, Joe Desotel, and I'm here with my co-host, Jessica Montoya Coggins. Hello, Jessica.
Hey, Joe.
All right. Well, so it's so crazy to think that me and you have been doing this podcast for this long, and we worked together for this long, and we've never even met each other in person. It's crazy. I can't even believe that.
No, I have the only person I've met is David, and that was in February 2020. And
That
so,
is so wild. Well, good news. We're going to get our first chance to hang out in person, and it's all thanks to Beto O'Rourke. He finally announced that he is running for governor, and he will be having a series of events across the state. Of course, we know very famously he had all 254 counties when he ran against Ted Cruz in 2018, and he's just getting started. And so he'll be up in Dallas on Sunday, and so that'll be our first chance to meet. That's pretty cool. But I think the real headline is that he managed to raise $2 million in just 24 hours, and that basically shattered all kinds of records. So kudos to Beto.
yeah, it's I think the most a Democratic gubernatorial candidate has raised in 24 hours. It's also, people have pointed out, it's more than Lupe Valdez raised in her entire time running for governor in 2018. Make of that what you will. But yeah, very, very astonishing. And I think of the video itself, for folks who haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, his announcement video, he mentioned a couple of things that probably surprised a couple of folks. And one being legalization of marijuana, and basically not hiding that or bury. I mean, he said it right in the middle, very casually, as something that we already agree on. And why are we not pushing issues where we already agree instead of issues where we absolutely do not agree, and there's a lot of division and not a lot of support for things like the abortion ban and things like that. And we know why, because of Republican politics, and but he's going to give us our best chance to reach an electorate outside of that, which has basically dominated Texas politics for the last 2.5 decades. So we're all excited to see where that's going to go. Do you have any other takeaways from his announcement, or the framing? We see Abbott is already spending tons of money and attacking him. Billboards, I've even had friends tell me they've seen billboards that are trying to link him to Biden. And of course, we saw one of the first things he did when one of the first conversations he had with the media, he actually has already been to South Texas, already been to the border, and has to some degree criticized Biden's handling of the border situation.
Right. I think, Beto's done a really good job of focusing this in on Texas. I wrote something for Signal about, healthcare has really also been something that he's seized upon. His first event after announcing was a roundtable with healthcare leaders from West Texas, talking about the state of rural healthcare. So, he's hammered Abbott for, the handling of COVID-19, the fact that there are, in the past decade, there's been it's something like 27 rural hospitals have closed. The number of counties that don't have a hospital in Texas, just the state of that. And the fact that we haven't expanded Medicaid, that was another thing that he mentioned in the video. We're just one of 12 states that hasn't done that. So I think, every opportunity where, they're trying to sort of pit this as a Trump Biden thing, and Beto's just like, no, we need to talk about Texas. We need to talk about the fact that, 700 people died in winter storm.
Mm-hmm.
71,000 Texans have died of COVID-19, and all these things that we should be doing and taking care of our citizens. And under Abbott's watch, there's been a dereliction of duty on that regard, and it's been deadly.
Absolutely. I think he will be on message when it comes to that. And if we want to talk about the federal government and bring them in, I think you nailed it with Medicaid expansion. That's what we should be talking about. Leave all the money that we've left on the table, that is Texas taxpayer money, that we just simply didn't accept because of politics. And it's hurting us because we're not. And the thing that comes to mind next is the infrastructure bill, where there is 27 billion that's coming to Texas, to repair and rebuild roads, bridges, and other, infrastructure, and not a single Republican voted for that. And so here we are again, tons of investment coming into the state of Texas where Republicans literally chose for only political reasons to not support that. And I think it's pertinent to kind of cover a couple of those things. So it's I think it's $27 billion in total. 3.3 billion is to build new roads and improve healthy, sustainable transportation options. 400 million to build a network of electric vehicle chargers to enhance long distance travel and charging options, and 100 million to help connect every Texan to reliable high-speed internet. And we're talking about rural people. We're talking about their voters who, like you said, have lost access to healthcare because of hospital closures, and don't even have access to new good jobs that are remote, where you don't have to go to the city and live in a city necessarily. You could have access to some of those same high-paying jobs and live in a rural area. Um, if that's the lifestyle you would to choose, like to choose. But if you don't have access to the internet, then you're not going to have access to those jobs.
Right. And I mean, we're living in a time now where internet access, I don't consider that a luxury at all. It's really truly a necessity.
Yeah.
You think about as you're saying, with work, some school options too,
Hmm.
where this is just completely unfair and not right for people to not have this. And, literally every single Republican said, you know what, we're not gonna vote for this. And I mean, I'm sure you see it every day, that roads, bridges, things that are just look like they're ready to collapse. Why are we living like this? I mean, it's 2021. Come on, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, I know that, even where I'm from, which is one of the economic engines of the state because of oil and gas, we have bridges that at some points they tell people like not to travel on, and they're considered in critical condition, and they have to be repaired. And we're talking like along I-10, the busiest interstate in the country. So Beto definitely, he'll have his hands full. We know Abbott has no problem raising money, and so I like how you said it's, the record was for the biggest Democratic raise of money in 24 hours, because we know Greg Abbott can make a phone call and get one person to give him $2 million. He's done it already with $1 million or more, having individual donors giving him $1 million at a time. And so the thing with Beto is, of course, he's doing it in medium and small dollar donations from just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people across the country, even who know the stakes that we face in Texas, and know that the future of Texas really is going to influence the future of our country. And so they know that, yeah, sure, it's only Texas registered voters can vote for Beto, but they all know that everybody is a part of this fight, and it really is going to be whatever happens in Texas so goes the country. If especially if we can do something good, we are the eighth largest economy or the ninth largest economy in the world. Um, and so, Beto, of course, now we actually have somebody at the top of the ticket. There was actually rumors that we'd have another candidate in the gubernatorial race. I don't know if you're familiar with Joy Diaz, but she's a KUT reporter. She then was a Texas Standard reporter, which I assume is broadcast across the state. But she has recently left that position, and it was assumed that she was leaving that position to come run for governor. I actually heard that she was planning on announcing on Monday, which is the day Beto announced, and maybe there's a reason we haven't heard, anything since. I did a little bit of research before this pod to see if I could find an online presence or website. I wasn't able to find anything in my initial search, so we'll definitely keep in mind. I don't see that it would be a competitive race, but there are a couple of positions left on the ballot that do not have a Democratic challenger. One of our colleagues, of course, wrote about how Sid Miller does not have a Democratic opponent. He is our current agriculture commissioner, already been elected twice to that role. And it actually looks like he's going to have a Republican, which we'll talk about in a second, But the other position is comptroller. Comptroller, and it's interesting because the current comptroller, Glenn Hager, is like one of the few elected officials we never hear from, right? Like his name hardly ever comes up. He is,
I had to Google it when someone was talking about comptrol, and I was like, well, gosh darn it, who the heck is that? I don't know
you
who
know
that is.
what? Kudos to him for like just doing his job, even if, maybe we agree or don't agree with some of the things he's doing. But I mean, it is more of a process job. It is not necessarily a political job. And that's really honestly what agriculture commissioner should also be, a more of a process job, and less political. But of course, being Sid Miller and sort of being this caricature of a cowboy and a Texan, and incredibly embarrassing and sharing all kinds of weird conspiracy theories all the time, he has made that a farcical sort of position. And that's why I think we're so embarrassed by him, and want to get somebody in there to replace him. But there was this article, and I think you said you might have read it yourself, from James Barragon in the Texas Tribune. And I see a lot of people talking about this article. It was kind of the big thing of today. Everybody was talking about. The headline was, Texas Democrats rely on voters of color to be competitive. So why are their top statewide candidates mostly white? I don't know. What are your
Right.
thoughts? How did
Yeah.
you feel
So
about it?
that got a lot of traction on social media. I guess it was a little. I mean, I would be a little frustrated if I was Rochelle Garza or Lee Merritt. Those are two candidates for Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, sort of implying that they're not sort of marquee names or fundraising. And I have to say, I see Lee Merritt on national television quite often. Um, but I think so. It did sort of, I know, rub people the wrong way, especially there was a new candidate for land commissioner, Lee Kleberg, who jumped in. And I don't think that there's another woman, Jenny Shu, who didn't quite get the same coverage when she announced. So I think people were sort of pointing out that this also has to do with the way that the media sort of interacts, where like maybe they are sort of conditioned to not see someone like Rochelle Garza or Lee Merritt as, sort of marquee candidates, even if they are, going across the state raising money. So that for me was kind of what I honed in on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there are some good points there. I'm a little worried that there is a scenario where it's all white men that are the main candidates for statewide office, and I don't think that's a great look. But
It's certainly possible, but
yeah.
I'm pretty confident that it won't be. I do think that Beto will be the gubernatorial candidate, and then beyond that, who knows? We've mentioned that for lieutenant governor that there are two current candidates. Matthew Dowd, who we've talked about, a former Bush guy, Republican sort of Lincoln Project guy, and then Mike Collier, who's also a former Republican, who had run previously for comptroller and has been running for this position for a while now, and as a Democrat, of course. And then just in the past few days, Michelle Beckley from your neck of the woods, former state representative. I guess actually technically she's probably still a state representative.
Yeah,
Um,
so Michelle Beckley, she actually won a very competitive seat in 2018
mhm,
in a county called Denton, which is north of Dallas, and it was a good race that she ran.
mhm,
She had announced that she was running for Congress against Beth Van Dyne, and then as Republicans tend to do, she got redistricted out of that district.
mhm.
And then they really gerrymandered the state house seats in Denton County.
Yeah.
So I she tends to be ranked as one of the most quote unquote liberal members of the House. So that is, I mean, I thought it was an interesting move.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and being a woman and a member of the LGBT community, I think that like you can't overlook that as diversity as well, in their ranks, because it's not really something you see on the Republican side. And so, yeah, when you write a story like that, I feel like the framing was more to rehabilitate the Texas Tribune coverage that they were getting nailed on, because most of their coverage for the past few months has been about Republicans trying to overtake voting rights and things like that. And so I felt like they needed some balance to this coverage. But I don't think this was the right lens personally, because of all the things that you said, and then also because, like, there's a reason why people of color are not in a position to run for statewide office in the same way that a wealthy white guy is. And so if a wealthy white guy is a Democrat and he's running as a Democrat, well, actually, I think that's a good thing. I want to see more of that. Because as I mentioned on this podcast before, in redistricting, past redistricting, particularly in 2003, when they did mid-decade redistricting with the sole purpose of getting rid of white Democrats, the whole point of what they were trying to do was to say, white people don't belong in this party. White people belong in our party. We're the party for white people, and then all the brown people are Democrats. And what we need to be is a Democratic Party, as a big tent party where people can see whoever they are as a part of our party and be part of our party, and that does include white people. And so if white people are going to run for office, they are going to do that, and they are welcome to I mean, anybody could go to the Texas Democratic Party and sign up and write a check and put their name on the ballot. And so it's not really the Democratic Party as much, but I think there's institutional and structural reasons why people of color are not in the same position. And we talked about it for the last several months. We see what happened. People of color led the growth in the state, and somehow Republicans still managed to create more white districts that prevented people of color from running. And the narrative is somehow that Democrats aren't diverse enough. It just drives me crazy because, like I said, we're talking about James White again. James White, ironically, James White is the only Black Republican in the entire legislature. They have a majority of 83 members in the House and a majority over 20, like 20 or 19 in the Senate. Not a single Black person right now is going to even return, because James White is retiring and he's going to go challenge Sid Miller in the Republican primary. So we'll see. I think Sid Miller probably will still win. But, if that's the case, Republicans will not only not have a Black person in the legislature, they won't have a single Black person in state elected office. And yet this article is about how Democrats are not diverse enough. That's the kind of stuff that just absolutely drives me bananas. So so I just been like really annoyed about that all day.
I also look at it too. We're like, sure, do I want to see more Latinos in office, but somebody like George P. Bush doesn't have any of my values. I don't want to support somebody like that.
Right.
I feel the same way about the other woman running in the
Ava
Republican primary,
Guzman.
Ava Guzman. So that's just no. I don't want to support that.
Yeah, I mean, right, absolutely. I mean, Republicans want to recruit more. I mean, they're the winning party. If they wanted to put diversity on the ballot, it's wide open for them. They could literally put people in the office because they drew these lines to be able to put who they want in the office. And if they're not doing that, then that's not the Democrats. We've been fighting to get fairness in elections and maps and voting rights for the past 2.5 decades. And so anyway, yeah, that kind of stuff just absolutely drives me crazy. And that kind of leads to the next subject here, which is there's been a lot of retirements from the legislature because you know what? It's just not fun anymore. You can't do anything. You can't work with your colleagues. It used to be that Republicans and Democrats and rural and urban folks would come together and do something that was good for their districts. Republicans would vote, for their districts. Democrats would vote for their districts, and they would find ways to pass legislation that worked. That's just not happening anymore, as we know. And there's been, because of that, a huge loss of seniority and institutional knowledge. My father, State Representative Joe Desautels, is retiring after 23 years, literally my entire adult life. And it's just no longer, fun. He
Did he
doesn't matter.
Did he share any sort of insight on that, or how he's feeling?
He didn't really go into that much, but he did share, with me and had been over the last months how disenchanted he had become because he, as a Democrat under Republican leadership, was still able to pass good bills for his district and do things that affected the whole state in a positive way, and all that just basically is just gone away in this last go round because of just the extreme nature of the political landscape. And then we see other, I think we're up to like 26 retirements out of the entire legislature. I mean, this is going to be one of the biggest turnovers we've ever seen. And of course, that just the political dominoes start falling, right? So every one of these retirements triggers a race. And some of these races, folks are retiring and then moving on or moving up or going for other offices. So we see State Representative Ina Minharz of San Antonio, who we've talked about before as a potential for county judge, officially announced that she is running for Bexar County judge in San Antonio, or the county seat of San Antonio of Bexar County. And then Garnett Coleman, who has been in the legislature about as long as my father, over 20 years or so, he just announced his retirement this morning. Of course, he has, had a long history of health issues over the last, several years that have become a little more prominent. And so a lot of that could be attributed probably to that for him. But Senator Whitmire, the longest serving senator that, Republican or Democrat, he's the dean of the Senate, and he is retiring from the Senate to go run for mayor of Houston, and he just announced that today. And so the amount just the number of people that are leaving is just astonishing, and a lot of it can be traced to a full-time governor using his hammer of politics and his ability to call endless special sessions on a part-time legislature. And that is not co-equal branches of government, and he did not treat them as such. And Alex Dominguez, who's a state representative in the Valley, Democrat, is now running for Senator Lucio's seat. Senator Lucio is announced his retirement, as well as, I believe, his son, Eddie Lucio III, who's also not coming back, I believe, as well. So, I mean, the list is long, right? And so we can't go through the whole list. I just feel like every time we talk, there's a new list. And so we just kind of cover the latest. But we're up to like 26 now, I think, at least 26, 27.
Yeah, well, I think especially with redistricting too, like that tends to up those numbers. And this past session was it was a doozy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were folks, as you mentioned, Michelle Beckley, who were looking to other races that they might be able to get in, and basically they just drew the lines as such that folks are basically left without a home, so to speak, a district to run in. And so, yeah, this is going to be wild. And I will say, for the Houston mayor's race, man, that is going to be wild. That's going to be a wild one. And so I think there's a constable race or a commissioner's race as well. Because of folks, we concentrate and we talk so much about the state redistricting, which does the congressional maps, the House, State House, and State Senate maps, but every county also gets to redraw their lines. And if we'll remember back just a couple of cycles ago, Harris County, where Houston is, was extremely competitive, and in fact, it tended to lean a little to the Republican side. Maybe the city of Houston was blue and Democrat and had a lot of blue districts, but the county of Harris leaned Republican, and every cycle since, it's moved bluer and bluer and bluer. And since this is the first cycle that the commissioner's court has been mostly Democrat, they've gotten to redraw their lines, and it looks like we're going to be able to pick up another commissioner seat in Harris County. And so, as you can imagine, there's tons of people who are positioning and setting themselves up to run for that, including Gina Kalani, who you may have heard her name because she had run herself for State House and lost last cycle, but she has a decent name ID because she ran a pretty formidable campaign. But there will be lots of other names that I think will pop up, and I don't know if you've heard of of any other folks?
Yeah, I think Ben Chow.
Yeah.
We actually talked with him. I know he was with the Harris County Elections Department. We spoke about this was back when Senate Bill 1 was still being debated. So I saw that he was running, but these are very important local races. We have actually my county commissioner in Dallas County is the sole Republican on that court, and I think there's going to be a competitive seat there. So a couple of candidates have announced on that. So, we keep talking, Beto, I think it is great that he's brought this energy to the state, but I hope that it really, trickles down. That's the only time I think trickle down economics ever works,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
it's, great that local folks can also sort of go hand in hand and we can just lift each other up.
Yeah, yeah, I think Beto, he absolutely had coattails in 2018, and I do think that he will have them again in 2022, and it is really good for the party that he's running, because win or lose, the amount of energy and resources that he's going to put into the state, and the attention and all of that, and it's going to encourage more people to run because of that you know he it will be really good for the future of our state. And it's just literally like 60 to 100 million dollars that would not have been here had he not put himself out there. And of course, he absolutely has a chance to win. So, we talked last time about the record number of voter registrations that now the state of Texas has another new record of registered voters. So, we've got to parse through them and make sure we're talking to the right ones and we get the right ones out. But Beto only lost by 200,000 votes in a state of 30 million.
I wasn't living in Texas at that time, so I one extra vote right here.
There you go. Absolutely. And so, yeah. And we are one of the youngest states. So that means there are tons of young people who simply were too young to vote then. And we've had literally 4 graduating classes of high school kids who are now in college and learning about civics and things like that. And probably are very disappointed in the current leadership.
And this is probably, again, why Republicans make it so hard to vote. A reminder for folks, we actually don't even have online voter registration in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot just go and register a voter at this moment. I would have to become a voter deputy registrar.
Mm-hmm.
And county by county, you have to do that. So
Yeah.
Beto, I know Powered by People was doing a lot of that work too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the first things just a couple of years ago they did when they were starting to get a little bit afraid of the Democrat surge in the state, was to make sure that your voter registration ability to be deputized had to be by county, whereas before you could just be hey, I'm deputized in the state of Texas to register voters, and you could register them anywhere. That is no longer the case.
So I was talking with someone from New York about how hard it is to vote in Texas, and I was going through everything, and you could just tell they were like, what you can't I could not park outside of like a Tom Thumb one day and just say like, all right, we'll let register you to vote. You have to do this formal training on that.
Oh yeah.
And then again,
yeah, and then they still weren't even happy with the new rules that they put into place. They also wanted to make increase the penalties on breaking those rules and make it a felony, and basically just muddy the water as much as possible to make somebody say, you know what, it's not worth it. And so stories like what we heard about the woman who was still on paper and thought she could vote and ended up voting provisionally and didn't even count the vote. Didn't count, but she got 5 years. I think those stories, GOP loves those stories being shared, because that's the kind of stuff that will scare the crap out of people and make them say, well, yeah, no, whatever, it's not worth it.
Yeah. I should also point out so in Tarrant County, the district attorney who chose to prosecute Crystal Mason for that, she has decided not to file for re-election. So that's another really important local race, Tarrant County district attorney. Folks.
Yeah, those are really, really important, especially as we talk about criminal justice reform, who's in the DA's office and things like that. All these prosecutors it's really important. And so That's not Dallas County though. You said which county was it?
Tarrant County, which is Fort
Terrence.
Worth.
So yeah, next door. Okay, because you in Dallas County, I can't remember his name. It's like a
Oh, John
Creole.
Crusoe.
Crusoe. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's kind of made a name for himself and really kind of putting himself out there on the criminal justice reform front, and just shows you what power
Really has.
local government can have an effect on people when you get somebody in there who's willing to use that, for good.
Mhm.
Um, and so, we talked a little bit about the Houston mayor's race, but I want to go back because there's an interesting crossover here into the pop culture stuff that we talk about. Um, Folks who will remember, the current mayor of Houston is Sylvester Turner. He was a longtime serving member of this Texas state legislature for like 40 years or something. Then he had run for mayor actually 3 times and won his on the third time and then won re-election. So now he's termed out. But in this last election, the person he ran against in the runoff, his name was Tony Busby. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you, but this guy is like a cartoon villain. I mean, he's like this. If you look him up, he's got a lot of weird controversies, and like he's one of these sort of billboard lawyers, right? And so, but the interesting thing is, he is the attorney for the folks who are suing the Astroworld people. And so now he's still back out there in the news, right? Like suing, you know, Drake and Apple and whoever the other organizers were. What's the main guy? Travis
The Live
Scott.
Nation and Travis Scott. Yeah.
Yes, and Live Nation. Yes, and so 750 million is the number that I saw, which what they're asking for. That's a lot of money. Um,
Yeah.
I saw a meme that was I actually thought it was really funny because I'd seen this meme used for other instances, but it's basically a guy hugging his girlfriend while she's cooking in the kitchen, and he's saying something like, I the first one I saw was like him saying, "Hey, the new PS5 is out," and she's like, oh, "Fine, just go get my purse." And so somebody like remade this meme, and it's Travis Scott hugging what's her name, Caitlyn Jenner, the
Okay, Kylie.
Kylie Jenner, his girlfriend, who is apparently the youngest self-made, air quotes, self-made billionaire, but he's hugging her. And she's, of course, it's supposed to be her at the kitchen. And it's like, hey, babe, they're suing me for $750 million. And she's like, go get my purse. Anyway, I thought that was really funny. So yeah, but the point is, yeah, that's a lot of money. And the idea here is that, as you've mentioned before, Live Nation is not new to these types of lawsuits, and it keeps happening. And so the only way to make these things not continue to happen is to make the damages so punitive that they actually take the necessary steps in the future to prevent these types of things from happening. So TBD on what happens with this case. But the last thing I saw was that the local officials, and I'm not sure if that's the mayor's office or who actually they mean by the local official, but they are saying that they have rejected outside investigators to come in and take over this case. And I don't know much about that. I need to do a little bit more research. So this is obviously developing, and so we will, keep on this and keep following this story because it is far from over. And Travis Scott is, one of the most famous entertainers in the world and will continue to be out there and have shows and things. So I think, this has to have a lasting impact. And so we'll see what happens then with this case, but TBD for now. It's probably gonna drag out for quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it is a very harrowing story. And I know that, one of the youngest victims was from Dallas, and from just some wounds at
Mhm.
9 years old. So just very heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's senseless, totally unnecessary, and it just shows, when all you care about is money, what ends up happening to people when you just think about them as chattel and as dollars, instead of as real people, and think about the consequences of what could happen to people, especially when they're so young, and the people you're appealing to are that young, and you just don't take the necessary precautions. But I think the last thing I have on my list to talk about is I just actually thought this was pretty funny. It's again sort of like a serious issue, but it was a kind of a funny take on what happened. So apparently, in the month of October, the Border Patrol seized about 900 pounds of fentanyl, which is obviously a very deadly compound that is, people either take or they mix with other drugs to sort of cut them. It's very dangerous, very deadly. And apparently they seized a whole bunch of it on the border in October. And so Ronna McDaniel, who is the GOP chair, the RNC chair, national chair for the Republicans, tweeted this out. And she's like, "Oh, they caught all this. They found 900 pounds. They seized 900 pounds." And she says, "This is what she says is that this is why we need border security." And it kind of makes your brain hurt to think about it. It's like, well, how the hell do you think they caught these people? They
Yeah, it's
think
like
they turned themselves in?
she's doing the communications work for the White House herself.
Exactly. You know what? I saw somebody tweet something like that. It was basically saying like, aren't stating from the RNC, Biden prevents 204 million deadly doses of fentanyl from crossing the border. It's like, yeah, thanks, Ronna.
I can't. She always is such a fascinating person because, she's the niece of Mitt Romney, but Trump hates Mitt Romney, so he like literally told her name. She used to go by Ronna Romney McDaniel, and so Trump was like, "Just drop your name." And I'm just like, it's just so fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, that
yeah.
is subservient.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they all are. I mean, Bush basically dropped his name, George P, just to try to get an endorsement. I mean, it's pretty sick, what's going on with these folks.
Boy, oh boy.
But yeah, so that's where we are. It'll be interesting. I think, yeah, Beto is absolutely going to nationalize this race, but and it's Republicans are going to try to criticize him for that. But let's be honest, that's all Greg Abbott is trying to do. He's trying to pin Beto to Biden. That's nationalizing this race. Every time he says Biden is not doing something on the border, that's nationalizing this race. And so Beto is going to do it in a way that hopefully brings the resources that we need to make good things happen in this state. And so I look forward to that. And it's going to be a long year.
It is. It is. I think so. But
Yeah,
we'll take it one day at a time.
one day at a time. Okay, great. Well, we always like to try to end on some good news. I will say that I saw that a zoo in Texas recently became home to some baby Komodo dragons. I think that's really cool. I can't remember which zoo it was, but it might have been the Dallas Zoo. But I'm gonna figure it out. I'll probably go check them out because I think that's really cool. And the San Antonio Zoo just opened a new exhibit of jaguars, which I think is like the biggest exhibit of jaguars in the world. And basically it's a situation where like they're kind of like in this open giant like terrarium where you can like walk through, and then they can like do their thing like above you and around you, so you're kind of like it's kind of an immersive experience. So I think I'd like to go check that out.
I love jaguars. When I was in seventh grade, we had a Amazon project that we all had to pick an animal to do like a little like project for it. And I immediately got the jaguar. I'm so excited. I'll
Nice.
check it out too.
Yeah. I'm a big fan too. I grew up watching like all of the Discovery Channel and National Geographic shows like all the time when I was growing up. And the jaguar is definitely unique. It's the biggest. It's like it's the strongest of the big cats. And so it's got the strongest bite. And I don't know. Yeah, they're just like really beautiful animals. Well, Oh, here it is. I looked it up. It's the San Antonio Zoo where the baby Komodo dragons hatch. So it sounds like I'm going to be taking a trip to the San Antonio Zoo pretty soon. So that is awesome. Yeah, so they just had a few hatchlings. You can go visit them. So um yeah, I think it's like the world's first time that's happened or something like that. But yeah. Uh so yeah. So go visit the San Antonio Zoo. You might see me there, either next to the Jaguars or the Komodo dragons. But yeah, anyways, I guess that's about it. I'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, I'll see you then.
Yeah. Well, folks, thanks again for listening. We always appreciate it. You can always find us online at texassignal.com and follow us for all the latest coverage. And as more people enter this race, we still have a few more weeks. So don't disparage the diversity of our ticket yet, because we haven't fully gotten it yet. We're still working on it. We got a couple more weeks. We'll see who all ends up filing, but guarantee it's going to be more twists and turns, and some very unexpected things are absolutely bound to happen. So keep it tight on texassignal.com, and follow us on Twitter, where we always share our breaking news and insights. And we really appreciate any support that you can give us. And you could become one of our Patreon members at texassignal.com in the top right, and you can join there and help to support the progressive journalism we do. We very much appreciate it. And I think we have some more news coming up on some interesting developments with Texas Signal, as we try to bring you the latest and greatest coverage of the 2022 cycle. So until then, and until next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.